for another bulletin. From me, Famarofo, and the rest of the team. Stay tuned to GRTS.
Fellow women, partners in development. You will recall that every year on the 8th of March, International Women's Day is celebrated throughout the world, of course with the objective to highlight the achievements as well as the challenges in the promotion of gender equality, equity and the empowerment of women and girls at the national as well as global levels. As we mark the day, therefore, let us remember that women continue to be victims of violence across the continent and the world at large, despite all the efforts we have made. Violence against women and girls has been recognized as a form of discrimination and a human rights violation, no doubt. States have obligations, therefore, to take appropriate measures to prevent, to prosecute, as well as to protect women and girls from all forms of violence. Various legal and policy instruments which are also aimed at prevention, prosecution, as well as the protection of women and girls from all forms of violence have been developed at the global as well as regional levels. Therefore, it is important for efforts aimed at the prevention of gender-based violence to be stressed in our various national, legal, and policy instruments. The Gambia's theme for this year's International Women's Day is elimination and prevention of all forms of violence against women and girls, which theme is indeed relevant and timely, as many studies have indeed revealed that gender-based violence is a real and widespread phenomenon in many countries within and among all social groupings and geographical groupings as well. Cognizant of the devastating effects, therefore, of violence on the health, social as well as economic advancement of women and girls, and consequently the national economy at large, a series of international conventions, protocols, and agreements have been ratified by the government of the Gambia, and the enactment of various national laws and policies developed to ensure effective gender mainstreaming and the protection of women and girls, and indeed of their rights. To this effect, the government of the Gambia has set up a broad-based mechanism for addressing violence against women and girls through domestication of international conventions, such as the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, UNCEDAW, the Protocol on the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the Rights of Women in Africa, as well as the Beijing Platform for Action, and of course its 12 critical areas of concern as well, into the Women's Amendment Act 2012. All those have been reflected. The Gambia has also fulfilled its reporting obligations on the implementation of the UNCEDAW and other international and regional conventions and treaties, such as the African Union Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality, African Women's Decade 2010 and 2020, and its related plan of action, as well as presented its initial, second, and third reports of the UNCEDAW to the UNCEDAW Committee in New York. Fellow Gambians, fellow women, the formulation of the Domestic Violence and Sexual Offences Bill 2012, the both bills, which are, of course, being discussed as of now at all levels, that is of Cabinet as well as the National Assembly, is also a significant milestone, no doubt, in addressing violence against women and girls. The main purpose of the Domestic Violence and Sexual Offences Bills are to combat domestic violence, provide protection, of course, for the victims of domestic violence, and also to amend related laws and procedures concerning the trial of rape and other sexual offences. The rationale behind these amendments is to bring the law in line with best practices, international and current developments in criminal law and procedure relating to the trial of rape and sexual offenses in general. This legislation would therefore have an impact, no doubt, on our criminal laws in the Gambia as enshrined in the Criminal Code and other existing laws of the Gambia that provide provision for such offenses. Fellow Gambians, fellow women, significant efforts have also been made by the different institutions in the bid to eliminate violence against women and girls. The Women's Bureau, for example, the Department of Social Welfare, Network Against Gender-Based Violence, Police Child Welfare Unit, and the Ministry of Justice, among others, also conduct a series of activities to address violence, such as preventive measures, services, care, and treatment of survivors. For example, the shelter for survivors in particular of gender-based violence. Multimedia campaigns have been made also on print and electronic media, as well as strengthening the capacity of the Police Child Welfare Unit and the child welfare officers in particular in combating gender-based violence. In 2010, a National Steering Committee on Gender-Based Violence was established to coordinate interventions that address gender-based violence in the country. The National Plan of Action, for example, on gender-based violence has been developed and implemented. The formulation as well as implementation of the Gambia's National Action Plan on Gender-Based Violence is part of efforts for the harmonization as well as the coordination of interventions of both state as well as non-state actors in sensitization and discussions on traditional and cultural issues that affect the health and well-being of women and girls. Fellow Gambians, fellow women, the development of the National Action Plan on Gender-Based Violence was supported under the UNICEF and UNFPA joint program. The partnership for the implementation of the National Plan of Action with civil society, religious leaders, community leaders, as well as faith-based organizations is essential in enhancing local-level commitment to the eradication of violence against women and girls. The activities of the Plan of Action focus on strategies, for example, to support new clinical research on issues that affect the health and well-being of women and girls, particularly working with media, judiciary, law enforcement agencies, community leaders, faith-based organizations, health professionals, as well as lobby for enactment and enforcement of a law against gender-based violence. Fellow Gambians, fellow women, in spite of the significant progress we have made so far, that is what has been achieved over the years in addressing violence against women and girls, inadequate human resource capacity, limited coordination of interventions have continued to hamper or undermine efforts in accelerating the elimination of violence against women and girls. I wish to thank therefore UNICEF and UNFPA and the National Steering Committee on Gender-Based Violence for the development of the Gambia's National Action Plan on Gender-Based Violence 2013 to 2017 and urge all implementing partners therefore and donors to mobilize the required resources for the implementation of the National Plan of Action, as well as assure all of the commitment of the government of the Gambia in providing technical support for the implementation of the National Plan of Action. Fellow Gambians and fellow women, may I take this opportunity also to inform you that the 2013 International Women's Day will be commemorated in the West Coast region in May 2013. The events will be celebrated as usual with a march past, fundraising and conference, deliberating of course on the theme eliminating violence against women and girls. On that note, fellow Gambians, I wish you a happy celebration and thank you all for your kind attention, and may the Almighty Allah bless all Gambian women and of course true women, all other Gambians and everybody resident in the Gambia. Thank you very much and may God bless.
Lewato programme yu bore la buñ leen di isili alxamis bu nekk ci GRTS dama ne ànd leen nak Linguère GRTS mu isil leen lamba yi nga xam ne moom ngeen soxla dina fekki naka borekat yi ci seen tàggatukaay yaram yi waaye tamit dina waxtaan ak ñi nga xam ne ñoo xam lambi démba ak lambi tey programme bi nag dinañ leen ko isil alxamis bu nekk ci juróom-ñetti waxtu yees genn wàll ci ngoon ba ci juróom-ñetti